One of the airplanes that I got acquainted with, but I didn't get actually to fly in, was the PB-1W. Now, if you look that up in the Air Force language, you look up a B-17 bomber. And the Navy acquired several of those as weather airplanes because they had an extremely good long range, and they were easy. They could, instead of bomb loads, they could put all their weather equipment and stuff on it. And we had one that came out of the repair depot, and they wanted it ferried over to the East Coast. I went out and I was trying to make myself familiar with the airplane, and I was amazed at how small the thing actually was. When you tried to go from the front cockpit back aft, you had to climb over a hump and everything that was your bomb bays and everything. It was a narrow channel, and once you got in the back of it, it was real narrow, and they had waist guns and stuff back there, but those were all gone. And I thought, geez, this was our biggest bomber to start of World War II. And yet, if you had your parachute pack on the front of you, you couldn't climb over the hump to get to the back part of it where you had to bail out. You had to open the bomb bay thing and try to miss whatever was in there and drop out. And of course, you wanted to know how to do some of that stuff if you were going to ferry the airplane for the first time. There again, they brought a different crew out that had previous experience and got it, but I got to walk through and look at it, talk about it. It was just another World War II airplane that I had the advantage of being part of or being inside of. One other, the B-24-9 bombers. They were built by Convair and several other airplane companies, but the one we had was built by Convair, BB-4Y, and it was a converted one. It was painted red, and they were going to use it as a drone, and we had to ferry it from North Island to the East Coast, and we had to go by and stop at Dallas en route to refuel and everything. And I was on board as the second Mech, which was the second engine mechanic. I didn't know much about the engines or anything, but they always had a flight engineer in case the flight engineer's responsibility was with the pilot and co-pilot and navigator to figure out the weight and balance load of the aircraft and fuel and all that kind of stuff. And that was a little bit beyond my talent at that time. And the guy that was trying to teach me and bring me to understand what was going on, because if he left the squadron, then I would be the next guy in line to learn how to be the flight engineer on that. And the flight engineer's job was to check the oil and the fuel and all of the hydraulic systems on the airplane, and make sure they were all topped off properly, make sure all the fuel caps and the panels were all secured, and everything on the airplane that could fly to bounce around was secure and stuff like that. And then in flight, he tried to manage again the synchronization of all four engines, and I never got that far on it. I got a flight from San Diego to Dallas. We landed overnight, and then we flew to the East Coast. And they decided that I should be the cook on that flight. And I knew that if we went to altitude, you couldn't boil water. You could fry things and stuff, and you could cook coffee in an electric pot, but you couldn't boil water. In boiling water at 10,000 feet, you could put your hand in it. And you're boiling all over there, but the temperature is about 80 degrees. So my B24Y, and the difference between the 3 and the 4 was one of them had 2 vertical tail fins for rudders, and one of them only had a single fin. The one I had a single rudder. It didn't have the 2 wide ones. And it was painted red. It was an exciting flight, 8-hour flight to get to Dallas, and then it was another 5-hour flight to get over to Norfolk. And I never got to fly in one again. I had the flight one time. I was in a P3, and I was stationed in Guam at the time, and I had a buddy that was a P3 commander pilot, and he asked me one day if I wanted to go make a trip over to Taiwan. And I said, oh, that would be wonderful. I'd never been to Taipei. And he said, well, I got room for you on the plane. And I think in a previous story, I told about going there and buying a desk and all of that kind of stuff. And we landed, when we left, we landed in Midway Island. And on the way back, when we landed at Midway Island, we had stopped there and refueled each time. And they put us up in the barracks there. Officers, enlisted, and everybody slept in the same building. And they had one club, and Midway is a very small island, and it's got these crazy Gooney Birds there that crap all over the place. And you're not allowed to kick them or move them or anything else. It's a bird sanctuary. And they seemed to fill up and poop every 15 minutes. So you got to watch where you're walking on the island. And that night, they said, we're going to burn the club down. I said, why are we burning the club down? They said, well, it's heavily contaminated, and they've condemned it. It's full of worms and stuff, and it's not safe anymore. The weight of the roof might cave in. So they're going to have their final dinner and stuff in it, and then we're going to have drinks and set it on fire. So we got to watch the official burning of the club on Midway Island. When we went down to Taipei, we were there, and I was surprised when we landed that they had fortified on the corners of the streets and stuff, and had sandbagged on all the corners and stuff, and they actually had guys with 30 caliber guns and stuff in these sandbagged areas up on top of these revetments and things. And I was amazed at how much armed and the facilities and stuff were. And of course, we had sailed by there when I was on the Bonhomme Richard, the Bonnie Dick, to show the flag, they had put us between China and Taiwan at that time, and we knew that we'd sailed by there just to show the flag that it was international waters and stuff. And I think I covered that in the previous discussion. But Taiwan was a different place. That's the first place in my career that other than Vietnam and stuff, where in Thailand, that I saw revetments and things, and actually armed. I flew back to Guam, and another event, one of my previous discussions, was the fantastic diving and stuff we had in Guam, and some of the ocean environment, and some of the things that we did there, like rappelling into the shark pit. I was also another special event in Okinawa. I got a chance to visit Okinawa on that trip to Taiwan, and we happened to be there on the day, the next morning when we woke up. They had brought 2,000 Japanese policemen down from Tokyo, and they were turning the island back over to the Japanese, and the Japanese police were driving on the right-hand side to the left-hand side of the island on the roads. They brought all the signs in, and they reversed the signs around and everything. So the day we landed, we were driving on the right-hand side. The day we went back to the airfield, we were driving on the right-hand side, the opposite direction. So I thought that was quite an event. One other special event I think I haven't mentioned was going to Hong Kong. And the day that the Brits turned Hong Kong over to the Chinese, on the 100-year lease was up, and they were closing up the U.S. military facilities there, and they were closing up the exchange and the commissaries and moving all the people out. And we flew in, and we made a run to the exchange as they were packing everything up, and we were able to get everything that we could, and we could buy it cheaper because the exchange would be gone the next day. So I got invited by the chiefs that were in the frigate that they had tied up there, and I went and had dinner with them. That was an exciting thing. I had a hard time understanding some of the Cockney guys that were on there. They have a different language of their own. And they had Chinese guys that were taking care of the ship and did all the cleaning and painting and stuff like that. So I got a tour of their living quarters, which was also their eating quarters. There was 8 of them there, and they slept in the same compartment, and out of the sides of the compartment were the beds that flopped down, and the upper ones they could raise up, and the lower ones they'd sit on all during the day while they erected this table in the middle and had their meals brought to them. So, but Hong Kong, I had been there, I think, a total of 5 times.